person that you are actually interacting with when you are interacting with your child is the other parent. You can think of this a lot like talking to a puppet that is part of a ventriloquist act on stage. The child's authenticity is deeply suppressed and inaccessible. Just because you see your child's physical body, that does not mean your actual child is present. They are no longer present.
So sad, so creepy, and very accurate.
You're not actually being rejected by them. You're being rejected by the other parent through the shell of them.
That's the most accurate statement regarding parental alienation that I might have ever heard. It's so true. So that's what I mean when I say it's not personal. The shell of your child would be rejecting any other parent. It could be anyone, but it is you, unfortunately. It could be anyone. Hi, I'm Maddie, and welcome to the Anti-Alienation Project. Here I talk about all things related to a certain form of child psychological abuse called parental alienation. What is parental alienation? Well, parental alienation is something that I went through for 20 years. It's when one parent, usually during a divorce or custody dispute, but not always, manipulates their child to reject their other loving parent without true justification. It's really damaging and long lasting. Since I figured out that I was alienated from my dad for 20 years, I've been speaking out about this abuse and rebuilding my relationship with my dad. I recently filmed a video on Teal Swan's take on parental alienation, and a lot of people really wanted a part 2 because she released a second video now. Today's video is going to be my part 2 on Teal Swan and parental alienation. Now, I don't really know anything still about Teal Swan's personal life. I think there is this thing in society where if you disagree with one thing about the person, oh, you have to disagree with everything, and that's just not the case. I can still analyze Teal Swan and her take on parental alienation without agreeing on everything she does. I'm looking at it from the child's perspective. Without further ado, let's just get into it.
In today's world, it is a poorly understood dynamic even by professionals, and it is a superbly abusive family dynamic. Today I'm going to give you some insights as to what to know and what to do if you are a parent who is being alienated. Feels personal, but here's the reality. It isn't actually personal.
I've said this to parents before in comments and whatnot, and I think I've made some parents bad by saying that because they do think it's personal, but you could be anyone. Your ex could have married anyone, the next person, and they would be doing the same thing to the next person. I think that's maybe what she means by it's not personal. It's nothing that you specifically did, said. It's nothing about who you are. You could be anyone, and they would be doing this.
Stepped into a transgenerational abuse pattern, as well as subconsciously the attempt for this other person to resolve the trauma experienced in that abuse dynamic. All kinds of things are being projected onto both you and your child, and because your child was born into this transgenerational abuse pattern before it was changed or resolved, they're not actually in a safe situation. A child who does not feel safe in a situation is a child in survival mode. They will adopt any strategy in that situation to self-preserve, such as suppressing their authenticity, aligning with whoever their survival is better served by aligning with, and going against whoever they need to go against. It isn't actually about you at all. It's about the other parent being caught up in an experience with you that is triggering their original trauma. That they are doing all of this to stay safe from the other parent. I know it doesn't look like that on the surface.
That's important. Yeah, they give into the alienation so that they can stay safe with the other parent. Yeah, that's true, and it's so counterintuitive.
The child is often not motivated to make things better with you and may resist seeing you at all. And while you need to do everything within your power to correct any actual issues between you and your child that are being exploited by the other parent, there is literally no way to build a good relationship with your child when the other person upon whom their life depends is actively and intentionally destroying it. Don't ever forget that in a healthy parenting or co-parenting situation, two people should be trying to help each other to have a better relationship with their child. This situation is the exact opposite.
Yeah, that's why it's so important for the kid to get away from the alienator. You can go through reunification therapy and everything, but if you don't get the kid away from the alienator, your efforts will be for naught. They've got to get away.
2. Due to enmeshment, you are not actually interacting with your child. You are interacting with a puppet.
Yikes. But it's absolutely true. This is why it's a cult-like relationship, because the alienator takes the child and they replace their identity with a false identity. You can watch my video about Stephen Hassan and freedom of mind. He's a leading cult expert. And I did a video on that, on his review of his book. Really interesting stuff. But yeah, they replace the child's authentic identity with a false identity. That's why it feels like you're talking to a puppet, because you are, essentially.
The person that you are actually interacting with when you are interacting with your child is the other parent. You can think of this a lot like talking to a puppet that is part of a ventriloquist act on stage. The child's authenticity is deeply suppressed and inaccessible. Just because you see your child's physical body, that does not mean your actual child is present. They are no longer present.
So sad, so creepy, and very accurate. If you think about any time a person is brought into an actual cult, like their personality completely changes. You feel like you don't know that person anymore. Anytime someone is indoctrinated into anything, I think that you can notice, oh my gosh, what has happened? They're not the same person. This is the same thing. But I do want to push back and add one thing, is that your child's authentic self, while it might be suppressed so much and hidden so deeply down inside, it is still down there inside. It will not be safe for them to regain that authentic self and rebuild that authentic self until they have realized the truth and they're away from the alienator. But it is still there.
Stop trying to talk to your child as if your child is there, no matter how tempting it is. They are not there. They are in a fused state with the other parent. They are experiencing what the other parent feels and thinks as if it's their own thoughts and feelings.
Oh, wow. Okay, sorry I keep stopping the video, but she has so many really important points here. Imagine the child walks into a room and that's where their alienating parent is. Here's how it was for me. In the room with my alienating parent, I was constantly conscious of her emotional state, of how she was feeling, of how she was acting. I would be conscious of everybody else's words and actions and how that might have been affecting her. I was always thinking about her emotions, her thoughts and well-being. I wasn't focused on my own, especially if I was in her presence. So this is absolutely true. The child is trained to put their parents' needs and wants and well-being above their own. And once that happens, it's almost impossible for the targeted parent to make any real change on their own, I believe.
You're not actually being rejected by them. You're being rejected by the other parent through the shell of them.
Teal Swan, dang. That's the most accurate statement regarding parental alienation that I might have ever heard. It's so true. So that's what I think she means when she says it's not personal. That's what I mean when I say it's not personal. The shell of your child would be rejecting any other parent. It could be anyone, but it is you, unfortunately. It could be anyone.
To look at how the child feels towards you, that you're mean, that you're awful, that you hurt them, that they're superior to you, that you deserve to suffer. They keep judging you from a place of moral righteousness. Bit odd for a child, don't you think? It's specifically exactly how the other parent feels about you, isn't it?
Yeah.
And about your relationship. All the insecurities and the core sense of inadequacy that is inherent in the other parent is being projected onto you via the child. Your actual child is like a pearl that has been buried deep beneath a shell, and that shell is a replica of the other parent and what the other parent wants.
That's a good metaphor. But let's also think about how terrible that is to do to a child. I mean, these alienator parents, they're not just your typical human being waddling along through life. They're mean and vindictive and jealous and angry and spiteful and insecure. And all of that is being projected onto your child. That's like an emotional war zone going on in their head. it makes you feel crazy. It makes you feel insane. And to put all that hatred, anger, vitriol, anxiety into their child without a second thought for the child's well-being, that's why that's a part of the reason why the child is a horrible victim in this situation, because they don't deserve to be indoctrinated with all of that negativity. They don't deserve to have to feel all of those terrible emotions. It's really sick.
Your child does not feel safe and is not in a safe situation. You cannot expect your child to expose vulnerable things that are deeply suppressed within them, such as their love for you and their desire to be close with you, or their authentic thoughts, authentic feelings, authentic needs and wants. You cannot expect their fragile subjective experience to surface when doing so absolutely will lead to huge consequences from the other parent. There will be retaliation towards them. Come on, you know this person. They will be treated as if they are betraying the other parent. Your child is essentially an emotional and mental hostage of the other parent.
Yeah, she's right. And this is what I seem to see from parents. It's like, do you not remember how your ex treated you? Do you not remember how they treated you? Do you not remember how horrible they were, especially at the end, and how creeped out you felt? Like, did I ever know this person? You probably wondered to yourself, who are they? How could I be so fooled? Yeah, well, they treating the child the same way a lot of the time. It's just I think a lot of parents have the idea that, okay, yeah, my ex would treat me terribly, but they would never treat my child like that. False. False. A lot of time, the alienated child or children will become the stand-in for the ex who's left. Don't underestimate the alienator in your life.
Or your child does not have the capacity to understand or process the severe level of manipulation and abuse that is happening to them. It can feel like they're under a spell, and trying to break that spell by trying to reason and logic your child out of what is happening will not work. They are deeply engaged in a coping mechanism designed to deal with a very unsafe situation. Taking up the strategy of defensively trying to set the record straight, or trying to get them to see the truth, or trying to get them to see what the other parent is doing, because you thinking that your child will be able to see through the whole game and not only stop playing into it, but stand up to it, will work. It's complete wishful thinking. It's not going to happen. Why? Because you're not in a normal situation. This child is not in a normal situation. This child is a hostage, navigating a very dangerous situation for themselves emotionally and mentally, if not physically.
Most of these people are going to tell you, don't tell your child the truth. Don't question them or ask if they're being told things about you. Don't even go near it. And I totally understand why everybody says this. In fact, I would probably say the same thing. It'll backfire, it'll push them further away, could further alienate them from you. But here's the problem. If we're telling the targeted parent not to tell their child the truth about their reality, first of all, how counterintuitive is that? How are you supposed to not tell your child the truth of their reality? In any other situation of abuse, take, for example, physical abuse, if your child is being physically abused, the parent will obviously intervene, tell the child it's not right, have a therapist who will tell the child it's not right. You'll have mental professionals trying to treat the child and assuring them that what they've been through is not okay. Parental alienation, not the case. And I do understand it's because in the hostage situation, they're in a cult-like relationship, and to question their reality is going to set them off. I don't know what the answer is. I just don't think these are the good ones.
6. The situation must change for there to be any change. Most people who are facing alienation dynamics severely, and I mean severely, underestimate the situation they're in. This situation is much, much more complex than a normal divorce situation with a child involved.
Okay, yeah, that's true. My dad did underestimate what was going on behind closed doors with me. It was way worse than he ever could have imagined. He's told me that.
More complex than simply trying to find ways to have a positive relationship with your child, or trying to logic your way out of the situation that you're in with your kids. This is going to be a methodical fight, and you are up against something so much bigger than you realize. Do not minimize the problem. If you decide to fight this fight, step one of changing the situation is to gain support from the mental health field, from mental health professionals, because they are the ones who the legal field listens to. Step two is to use those mental health professionals in a legal fight. If you do not go down that road of fighting to get your child into a different situation, one where they are not in an emotional and psychological hostage situation with the alienating parent, what you are choosing is to let your child go to the alienating parent and to let them deal with that unsafe situation in any adaptive way they can, including a continuation of many of the behaviors you have already seen your child display, with the hope that things will change in the future. That is 100% what you are choosing if you don't go down the road of the fight.
I gotta say, this is hitting me a little bit emotionally, just because I wish my dad had fought harder, and I don't blame him. I know that he did the best he could, and he never gave up on a relationship with me, but I wonder what would have happened if he had not minimized the situation, because I know he told himself it was temporary, it's all going to work out, it's just her adjusting to the divorce. He definitely minimized the situation, but in doing so, he did exactly what Teal said. And I had to choose the alienator. Fight for your kids if you can. And however that looks like to you, but yeah, just fight for your kids.
7. While you are going through this process and without expecting for it to improve their behavior at all, it is critical to behave and communicate with your child in consistent, caring, and loving ways. This means send them consistent messages of your love, offer support, even if it isn't taken. You can think of this like leaving breadcrumbs for them to find their way home and to find their way out of that protective shell. These things exist as proof of your presence, your love, and your support. Keep offering this no matter if they reject it. The child also needs to see this kind of proof that contradicts the vilifying narrative that is being fed to them by the alienating parent. Even if the worst happens and they only break free from the psychological hostage situation as adults, they need to know that you are always available to them, wanting that connection with them should they ever want it.
That's not the worst that can happen, though. And we have people in our support group who figured out the truth and their parent had already died. And a lot of kids will never figure it out. They will live a life as a shell of themselves, a whole entire lifetime as a shell of themselves. So learning the truth in adulthood is not the worst that can happen, believe it or not. Oh, also suicide. A lot of people commit suicide who go through this as children and parents. So it's actually not the worst that can happen. Right now, it's kind of like the best case scenario.
They need to know that you will not abandon them. Do so knowing that the alienating parent will see literally every single thing you say and do and will use it against you.
That's true. But back to the breadcrumb thing she was talking about. This is all about unconditional love. You have to make the decision when you send that text, make that call, send that letter, send that gift. Whenever you do anything that feels like you're going to get rejected again, you gotta expect to be rejected again, but you do it anyway because you love your child unconditionally. You're not doing any of these things to get anything in return. You're doing it to express your love unconditionally. I recently had someone who sent me an email asking if they should continue to pay for their children's miscellaneous fees that they're asking for money. The parent said they only come to me when they need money, and this is controversial. What targeted parents should do in that situation, but I am so glad that my dad financially supported me the whole time. I will say that it means so much more now that I know the truth. But even then, when he did, I felt very grateful that he was still financially supporting me. That was a way that I think my dad could show his love unconditionally, even though the other ways he wasn't allowed to. So just any way that you can show your child unconditional love, it might not appear to be getting through to them in the moment, but everything that you do now will have a payoff later.
8. Your child is already and will be emotionally and mentally damaged by this experience. It's very important to accept because many alienated parents harbor a self-comforting illusion that the child can somehow escape this damage.
Yeah, I have seen that. I've seen parents who are saying, I'm going to give up the fight because my child, I can tell it hurts them so much to have to be put in the middle. Or parents will say, because I'm fighting so hard for my child, it seems to be making things worse. I think I'm going to walk away. What you're doing is leaving your child with their abuser in black and white terms. And that is what you're doing. You are leaving your child with their abuser. That comes with a lot of long lasting damage to them emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and developmentally. It's a mess.
This situation will alter the structure of their personality. They are learning how to have dysfunctional and unsafe relationships. They too will need to overcome a core self concept of inadequacy. They've been systematically trained into inauthenticity. They've lost a relationship with you, who, by the way, deeply matters to them, and so much more. On top of this, the burden of the other parent's transgenerational trauma, which they did not move through, they did not heal, has now been passed on to them. It is now on your child's shoulders to repeat or to heal from.
She's absolutely right. It's a lifelong sentence, as my friend Dawn McCarty says often. Shout out to her. It's a lifelong sentence, okay? If you go through this for an extended period of time and it goes into adulthood, even your early adulthood, you're going to be healing from this for the rest of your life. I mean, it really, I'm serious. It alters your personality, your core beliefs about yourself and the world, your ability to interact with others, relationship styles. I could go on and on. It's like living with the death of a parent. Like you could never fully get over the fact that your parent died. Like it is a lifelong process of healing, in my opinion. I don't speak for all alienated kids. They set up a situation of madness and then you react in a normal way to the madness, but they use your reaction as evidence for their original claim. It's just so annoying. It's infuriating. So once you understand how this works, though, you have an upper hand because you can do what you can practice ahead of time. You can practice your calm reactions, your loving responses when you're furious inside or really hurt inside, so that when it happens with your child, you can show those loving, calm responses, even though you're very emotionally turbulent inside. I know this is a tall, tall, tall ask. It's almost an impossible ask, but it is what targeted parents really need to do.